Oh, another week. You know, I can tend to find similarities in some of these weekly fishing reports, and it's funny. As we get into this time of year, the consistent theme seems to be weather conditions, change in temperature, cold mornings. And we've had some good conversations recently with some of my good friends, with fellow fishing partners, with just some sideline conversation, not even football games, about how weather can play a role. And I think there's certain times a year where weather plays a very big impact, whether it's temperature, which cools the water, whether it's a storm, all that sort of stuff. And I think the 2 times a year where it's probably the most impactful is going to be springtime, and then here in that late summer into fall, because we see those drastic changes in weather, temperature, air temperature, which can cool the water, which can warm the water, which can put these fish into kind of a state of undecisiveness. And we're seeing that right now. So we wake up in the morning where it's in the 40s, it's cold out, it's my Blackfish soft shell pants, it's my Gale hoodie, it's a little bit of wind, and it feels chilly. And then by the time we hit the lunch hour, it's back into UPF shirts and shorts, and water temps rise, and fish make some drastic movements. This is the time of year where you have to think about that kind of stuff. And we've seen that very evident this past week, where we've seen fish make very substantial moves in one day. Not even one day, in 6 or 7 hours. And it's that time of year where these fish are moving a lot. They're never in the same spot. They're changing their behavior. They're changing the pattern. We're changing what we throw at them. 1 second, they're crushing a chatterbait and a moving bait and a buzz bait or whatever. The next second, we're slowing down and we're flipping milfoil mats, and we're slowing down with hair jigs, and we're slow rolling stuff to get these fish to bite. And that can be any which direction. It can start fast and end slow, start slow and end fast. It's crazy. And it really matters too on light conditions. Do we have an overcast sky? Do we have some wind? Do we have some precipitation? Is it super sunny? Those things play a factor this time of year. So what I would always encourage anglers this time of year in the fall months, as we move into fall, is to be versatile. Show up with moving baits and finesse baits. Be willing to adapt and try it all. Don't settle for the fish are not biting, because we've shown here this week especially that the fish are biting. You just have to change how you fish them. You have to change your approach. You have to change your speed. Those sorts of things. And sometimes we saw this evident on Friday. We changed lakes. We changed bodies of water. We actually moved bodies of water after 3-4 hours of fishings, where we decided, let's fish something a little more tantic, a little more stained. It's not getting beat up by the wind as much. The conditions have been more stable. We made a move. The team caught bigger fish. So those are things to consider as well as you plan out your day. Is you may decide to move a body of water altogether to catch your fish. So keep that in mind. Not always the case, not always an option for some of us, I get it. But if you have that option and you have a full day to get after it, maybe up your sleeve you put the second lake into play and see if you can get some of these fish to go. So how we've caught our fish this last week, been pretty consistent. Chatterbait, swim jig. You can see Brody's even still has on the swim jig here that he did a bunch of damage with. He was throwing the all-terrain perch, that new perch natural series color, and a little Kitech swim tail on the end. That was his whooping stick. He caught a bunch of fish on this thing. Just a good looking rod. Got this for his birthday. This is a Daiwa Tatula. This is one of the silver series rods. Pretty cool looking stick, but he catches a bunch of fish on that. Pretty awesome. It's fun what these kids pick out. So the swim bait, obviously we've beaten the chatterbait with the dead horse, but I'm gonna be honest, my better fish the last 3-4 days came on a chatterbait. Cover water, I can get after it, I can slow it down, pause it. You don't just have to cast and retrieve. I can let it pause and flutter down through pockets and rip it out just like I would a jig. So it's a very versatile presentation. However, there's a lot of slime and gunk on these lakes right now. If you're out there, you'll see that. We've been on Minnetonka, Waconia, some Westminster lakes, Chisago area. You're starting to see that kind of slimy, weird goop as the water drops into the mid-60s. That's okay. It's not going to shut the bite off, but it can change what you throw, because moving baits like a chatterbait, that loose weed floating around, that mossy, goopy stuff, slides up your line or gets caught on the lure. Chatterbait don't want to move. You know how it works. That's just how it is. One presentation that has kind of shined through here the last couple days and has been very consistent is technique pattern presentation is flipping. You know, we flip all summer, we flip heavy milfoil all summer. Now these fish are moving shallow, but they're still relating to that matted stuff on the surface. So when you look out there and you see, let's say, slack water when there's a ripple, a lot of times that's weeds touching the surface. And if there's enough water depth underneath that right now, which can be tough, we've seen some lakes drop water 2 feet, but if you see good water depth underneath that thick matted stuff, go flip it, go punch it. Some of the big bass are sitting under that stuff right now. Main little points, even up Main Lake, all that kind of stuff coming off structure. Look for those matted weeds, and we found some nice fish. So there are some fish sitting in that 3 to 6 foot range, Main Lake foil. And if you see that still touching the surface, and it's big isolated clumps of matted milfoil, and there's good water underneath, you can oftentimes get bit. And how we're catching them, I've been throwing heavy Grassmaster jigs from All Terrain. The last couple days we've caught fish on these. This is just a 3/4 ounce or 1 ounce or 1 1/4 ounce. You can see that's big and beefy. That's a good looking jig right there. Big heavy head on it. That thing's gonna push right down. It's gonna shoot just like this. You can see it's like a bullet. I'm gonna flip that jig up in the air, and that thing's gonna go right up, and that's gonna punch. You've heard that term, punch. Some anglers just use the term flipping, but punching probably symbolizes more of what this is actually doing. So that heavy weight on the head, it's top heavy. If I let it swing in my hand, look at that. The hook just wants to go down, or the head wants to go down. Throw that up, let that thing push right through there. Let it hit the bottom, and I'm fishing a Mr. Twister pocket craw right there on the back end of that. You can see it gives it some profile, gives it a little more appeal. Let it hit the bottom. I got the rod tip up. I'm giving it just a couple subtle shakes. See if there's a fish, pulling up a little bit of slack, a little bit of line pickup. If there's a fish there, it's gonna bite it. It probably will have bitten it by this point. If there's a fish there, shake a little bit, reel up, pull it through, flip it to another spot, looking for thick, isolated clumps of weeds, maybe a little pocket here or there, and I'm fishing heavy braid. I'm fishing 50, 65 pound braid to maybe like a 17 pound or even sometimes 20 pound, you know, fluorocarbon leader. If you're fishing real heavy, gunky stuff and the water's dirty, you probably can go without the leader and tie right direct with your braid. But I've been fishing some clearer bodies of water like Minnetonka, Waconia, things like that. So I'm putting that 17 or 20 pound 3 foot section of braid on, or fluorocarbon on the end of that, and I'm working that Grassmaster. And the beauty of this setup, if I'm not fishing a Grassmaster, I'm fishing a 4 or 5/0 heavy gauge trocar flipping hook and a big 1 ounce tungsten or lead flipping weight on the end that's pegged. And we've shown that in other episodes or other weeks as well. Same concept, flip and cover, heavy weight, punch through that, hit the bottom, and give the meat to those fish. If you think you got a bite, set the hook. A lot of times they just come over and they pick it up. And sometimes you question, is that a fish? I'll pick my rod up enough to feel weight. And usually at that point, you'll feel them, and hook sets are free. Give it to them and bring that fish home. So that's been a fun way, a relatively easy and fun way to catch bass right now. We're also getting some fish under docks. We're getting some fish on crankbaits. There's still some anglers fishing deep, catching fish in 14, 16, 18 feet of water on hair jigs. Adam Griffith on Friday caught a bunch of fish slow rolling a chatterbait in deep water. In fact, he outfished all of us slow rolling a chatterbait in 15, 16, 17 feet of water, and he was catching bass and walleyes doing that. So Griff's a wizard. Tough to duplicate the way that guy fishes, but it worked for him. He caught a bunch of fish. The guy's impressive. So plenty of ways to catch them. I have not targeted a lot of walleyes again this week. I apologize. We're catching a pile of pike on chatterbaits and swim jigs. So if you want to just go fishing, we've talked about just going fishing. Good time of year to do that. That's going to be your swim jig we talked about. That's going to be your chatterbait. That's going to be your 4 to 8 foot range, cover watery. Some fish are even up shallower if the weeds are clean and there's some good inside weed lines. There's some fish under trees even right now. Again, these fish are moving around. Adapt, be versatile, be willing to adjust. That's going to be the keys this week as we get into late September. Oh boy, wow, where's time gone? So water temps, mid 60s is where we're at. We did see them teeter around 70 here this weekend with Just surface temp momentarily because of the warmer weather. But generally speaking, water temps are kind of hovering in that mid 60-degree range, maybe upper 60s. And it looks like this week we're going to see that continue. We got some more rain predicted, we got some wind predicted, we got some sun, we got some clouds. Like we said, versatility, adapt, 2 keywords this time of year when you're out there fishing. So get out there, have some fun, enjoy the bite. The weather continues to be comfortable where you can wear some sweatshirts if that's your thing, but don't neglect the sun shirts because you're going to need them in the afternoon, it seems like. So get out there, have some fun, catch some fish, and we'll catch you next week as we move into the end of September already. Before you know it, we'll be doing October fishing reports. Good luck out there.